students. This part of feminist literary criticism or feminist literary theory is related to the key authors, the prominent authors who contributed a lot to make this theory productive, positive, as well as applicable. So the names are Simone de Beauvoir, Virginia Woolf, Kate Millet, Elaine Showalter, Michel Barrett, Julia Kristeva, Helen Strauss. So first of all, we will discuss Simone de Beauvoir, whose time period is from 1908 to 1986. And you have read about this particular philosopher and writer in existentialist movement or in existentialism. He is a French writer, critic, philosopher, social theorist, and the most influential feminist personality so far as specifically the second phase of feminism is concerned. She majorly contributed to existentialism along with Jean-Paul Sartre, who was the founder of existentialism and the basic philosopher who, in fact, gave the idea about the existence of human beings, that existence precedes essence. Simone de Beauvoir's views about feminism are as that women need to the same kinds of activities and projects as men place them to some extent in the traditional of liberal or second wave of feminism. Basically, the women, according to the Beauvoir's views, women needs to have the same kinds of activities and projects other than their duties. You may also say that these activities and projects are related to the duties assigned to the women by the men also. But the place the men are having or possessing in society, that is greater than the women. Although both are presenting the same duties, but men are having the greater place in society. So her point of view or her idea was that women need the same activities and projects as men are having or men are performing. So far as the traditional or liberal extent of those duties, activities, or projects were concerned. Or we may highlight the second wave of feminism over here, where women needs equality in society. She was a socialist feminist writer, and she dealt with the problems inherent with patriarchy and capitalism. That in patriarchal society, women were not at all considered to be able to have a person who possess the power of decision or who is able to decide about some issues of family, as well as capitalism, that women were not at all trustworthy, able, efficient members of the society. Simone de Beauvoir's work, The Second Sex, presents a classic and nerve breaking contemporary ideas, and these ideas have made this work the important, significant work, the most influential work, which conveys that women have always been subordinated and treated as the other. For the first time in history of all the literary movements, for the first time, the concept of the other for women was presented by Simone de Beauvoir, and it was the fact that she told us about the idea that women were really treated as the other because there was gender inequality in society. So women were marginalized, women were treated as the other, that they are not owned by the family as well as the society. Other works like Ethics of Ambiguity, published in 1947, The Mandarins, 1954, Memoir of a Dutiful Daughter, 1958, all are based on the treatment of women as the other, as well as she also demanded the uh, equal, original, as well as respectable status or respected place for women in society. Number two is Virginia Woolf, whose period is 1882 to 1942. And Virginia Woolf was famous modern writer who belonged to an influential family which gave her access to libraries and some other vibrating resources, which helped her out in becoming a good reader, further a writer as well as critic. So Virginia Woolf was lucky enough in as a member being born in an influential family where she had the permission to go to libraries as well as to other parties or groups. She was there to converse with all those literary minded people, and hence was the reason that she became an influential writer or as well as a significant person, because he had the opportunity to read so many books just to become an intelligent critic. And it is true that if the person is not a good reader, he or he cannot be a good writer or a critic. She was a pure feminist from the core of her heart, because she strived for the rights of women, so far as the education of the women as well as basic rights of women were concerned in patriarchal society. She was highly intellectual novelist of her time, and it was really amazing and wonderful act on the part of Virginia Woolf that she created the world of novel from a female's perspective, which was not at all permitted before her time. And she wrote about the psychological awareness as well as psychological issues of men as well as women in that society. And specifically she as she wrote all these things from the perspective of a female, because she was a female, so her ideas was not at all only concerned with females problems, but he uh, told the solution as well, and then the problems which were created by men in society for the women, and women were used as the tools in the hands of the males. She created the best writing mode, that was stream of consciousness technique, a hallmark of modernist movement. And at the same time, she presented the juxtaposition of present and the past, which was coming as well as going on in the minds of the characters. And this was the basic psychological issues of the minds of the characters, which she presented for the readers to read them and to understand the issues of the characters whom which they were going on. And stream of consciousness was not at all introduced before Virginia Woolf in literature. So she got the idea, as well as she was entitled as the discoverer of this very technique. Mrs. Dalloway, which was published in 1925, and the To the Lighthouse 1927, Orlando, a biography in 1928. All these three works were based on stream of consciousness technique, and she not only told the idea of using this technique, as well as she also gave the pros and cons to the society, as a new mode was not at all easily accepted for the people. First of all, this thing was very difficult that a woman was writing, and the second thing was that a woman was creating some new mode. So the criticism was at its peak against the women writers, as well as against the discovery of this technique. She was expert in introducing interior monologue and psychological insight of the characters. Uh, all the feelings or the passions or issues or ideas which the characters were unable to discuss openly, Virginia Woolf introduced interior monologue and gave psychological insight of the characters to the readers, as if those characters were talking to the readers. And this interior monologue was the good technique on the part of the writer, as the readers were feeling the same thing and they were getting the deep ideas about the personality of the characters. She was famous in exposing the hypocrisy hidden under the masks of elite class. Uh, Although the corruption was present in elite class not in the time of Virginia Woolf but before her, but for the first time from the perspective of female, or from the point of view of the female writer, this hypocrisy was presented, and nobility was falling down from its standards in society. And high ups were coming down, as well as the downwards are the downlings, are the people who were underlings, are the who were considered as the ignored one people, and they coming towards the climax of society. So with the help of stream of consciousness, interior monologue, psychological insight, and depth of the characters, as well as the hypocrisy which was hidden in behind the masks of that class, all these things were exposed by this particular writer. Number three is Kate Millett, whose time period is from 1934 to 2017. She was an American feminist writer, educator, artist, and activist, and she described as a seminal influence on second wave feminism, and is best known for her book Sexual Politics, which published in 1970, which was based on her doctoral dissertation at Columbia University. When she was doing her PhD thesis, and at that very time she published her book Sexual Politics in 1970, and he gave went to the issues related to the sex and sexuality, which was dealt in the form of bitter experiences on the part of ladies specifically. And this very time was related to second wave feminism, and she was really famous for all these efforts which she done through the help of her thesis. Whatever he wanted to say, she tried to research about all those ideas and then presented her dissertation. The journalist Lisa Featherstone attributes the attainment of previously unimaginable legal abortion, greater professional equality between the sexes, and sexual freedom in part to Millet's efforts. This journalist was there to appreciate, to attribute, as well as she was there to defend the issues of sexual politics which were presented by Kate Millett, and she also contributed a lot in the legal abortion issues, as well as the issues of professional equality, because only men before this time only men were able to be professional, and they were there to get official jobs, and women were not at all allowed. So after getting the right of university education for females, the females become strong, even stronger day by day, and they became greater professionals of the time. So this was the outcome of the effort of all these philosophers. And she also fought for sexual freedom, that on sexual freedom was not the entity which must be enjoyed by the men of that time, but women can also be there to free so far as their sex and sexuality was concerned. The feminist, human rights, peace, civil rights, and anti psychiatry movements were some of Millet's principal causes. These were the causes or the reasons for which he fought, because he was a feminist first of all. Afterwards, he was a champion of human rights, and then he was the peace activist person. And then he fought for the civil rights of human beings in society, as well as he presented anti psychiatry movements. Her books were motivated by the activism such as women's rights and mental health reform, and several were autobiographical memoirs that explored her sexuality, mental health, and relationships. She did not only write about the ideas of all those females who were suffering, but he mixed all the autobiographical memories of her childhood, of her grown up age, and the mental health which she needed herself, which she wanted to restore. So she gave ideas related to all these issues, which were needed to be discussed in the form of any book. Her books like The Second Sex, published in 1970, The Prostitution Papers, A Candid Dialogue, 1973, Flying, 1974, Sita, 1977, were the famous books so far as feminism and feminist movement was concerned. Next writer is Elaine Showalter. From 1904 to date is her time period. She is still alive. She is an American feminist critic. She shifted her attention from andro texts, which considered to be the books written by men only, to gyno texts, books written by women. Before Elaine Showalter or before the movement of feminism, the books were only written by the males. Language used in the books that was also discovered and set by the men, and it was considered to be the standard language because men had all the priorities, as well as they were professional, and they were the free movers, and they had the right to write anything related to any issue of society because there were male dominated society, and they were enjoying the independence and freedom in every field of life. Same was the case with the literary field, writing was concerned. So Elaine Showalter shifted the attention from androtext to gynotext, and she got got the right of writing books by women. She coined the term gynocriticism, which was a framework to assess the works of female authors and critically evaluating them. Gynocriticism was not only based on the works or the texts created by females, but it was based on the criticism that the judgment by all other critics of the world. They might be men, they might be the other women. It's a canon which provided female writers a foundation which was earlier under male writers. So, with the help of the fight and struggle of Elaine Showalter, the female writers became famous, and they were able to create any sort of book or to publish their book or papers related to the issues by female community. She stressed that female canon is present since primeval times, and modern times only need to discover it. So this activity, this idea was present before the time or prehistoric time, but the modern times only there to discover this quality, this entity, this idea about the ladies are in ladies by this time. She gave three phases to feminism: feminine phase, feminist phase, and female phase, and all these phases have been discussed earlier. So far as background of feminism was concerned, you may go back to the second part as well as the first part of feminism for the detail of these three phases. Michel Barrett, 1949 to date, is her time period, and she was Marxist feminist. She bridged the gap between Marxist ideology and its struggle to overthrow exploitive capitalist structure. The capitalist structure was very near to the patriarchal society. Domination of the males was everywhere, and it was followed, as well as women were there to obey all the things which were set by the capitalistic structure. So she toppled it down by the help of her struggle. Feminism, with its efforts to overthrow patriarchal institutions, was the main idea presented by Michel Barrett, and she not only gave the idea, but she fought and gave the strategies to the females to overthrow that patriarchal institutions. It was not at all a war between the sexes. It was a war between the inequality of the gender or inequality of the sexes. Capitalism refused to end suppressing working class, and this can also be highlighted in the form of the suppression or oppression faced by females so far as capitalism was concerned, because patriarchal institution or patriarchal society was only creating issues or oppressions for the females. She criticized the work which undermined the worth of women as writers. She was not at all in favor of the criticism against women, or rather she also gave the chance and opportunity that women writers must be appreciated, and they should not at all be underestimated only because that they are the women. She was against the marginalizing nature womanly to disregard the works by women. She was not at all favored the ideas of marginalization of women because they were women only. Same was the case with the works produced by women. that women works was not considered able or able enough to be read by men or all the members of society, because they were created by women, and women had not a broad minded view or liberal view, because they were not allowed to go out from their homes. They had a limited circle, that's why they had limited ideas, and they had limited vision about the world, so their works were not worthy to be read. So this writer was totally against the marginalizing nature of this disregard works by the women. Next is Julia Kristeva, whose time period is started from 1941 to date. She was Bulgarian French feminist, philosopher, literary critic, semiotician, psychoanalyst, and novelist. Or you may see students that all these attributes, all these characteristics, all these qualities are present in one particular person, that is Julia Kristeva. She was intelligent enough, she was so much able and efficient lady, so far as her ideas about radical ideas about the world and modernist movement as well as feminist movement was concerned. She adopted ideas from philosophy, psychoanalysis, linguistics, post structuralism, postmodernism. So, being able enough, she was really efficient, she was really capable of using philosophical ideas, of creating a sort of psychoanalysis, of giving the good ideas about linguistics, and then post structuralism and postmodernism. All these ideas were based on the depth of the mind of this lady, because he wanted to serve the society. Uh, she was essentialist in nature and influenced by Barthes, Freud, George Bataille, and Lacan. At the same time, she was influenced by Barthes. Death of the author, that meanings are not at all only can be created, meanings are not at all be limited to the author's perspective, but when author is dead, reader is alive, a reader is born, and reader is there to create his own meaning. So she was having all these modern ideas, and her books are based on all these ideas. Then Freud and Lacan and George Bataille, who presented the idea of psychology, psychiatry, as well psychoanalysis, and she also presented the process and as well as progress of language through the psychological development. Works: Powers of Horror 1980, Soul Negro Depression 1987, Desire in Language 1969, and many other famous works make Kristeva stand out among the philosophers. Her works were not only written about some narrative, or were not written about only for the sake of description, but she gave these narrative a sort of critical evaluation, a sort of critical appreciation, and then she wrote from her own critical philosophical view about the power of horror as well as the depression, desire in language, which were the issues of that particular age. She presented theory of abjection, which conveys the meaning as becoming cast off and separated from norms and rules, especially on the scale of society and morality. She coined the word intertextuality as a continual exchange and relationship building between texts. One text can highlight other texts in it. Uh, Eastern text can highlight Western text, or Western text can highlight Eastern writers. So this is called intertextuality. This does not mean that you are undermining, or you are under uh, mm, estimating your own value of the work. Yeah, or your work is becoming valueless if you are going to highlight the text of other people or the references of other people. But it created or it set a sort of scenario that by intertextuality, or the technique was helpful, very helpful and useful for the readers to give a change to the world of written material. She considered in The Power of Horror, the abject refers to the human reaction to threatened breakdown in meaning caused by the loss of distinction between subject and object, or between self and the other. These were the radical ideas on the part of this particular writer, and still Today she is doing all these things in reviewing all these ideas which were presented by her in earlier times. Next writer is Helen Strauss, 1937 to date. She is a French feminist philosopher, literary critic who founded French feminism with other writers due to ideas propagated by feminism. She was also in favor of the freedom and independence for women so far as their education, their job, their professional life, as well as their personal life was concerned. She also was in the favor of giving space as well as freedom to the ladies. She was influenced by Derrida's ideas of binary opposition, the theory of opposition that one value comes through difference, that two things must be judged at the parallel basis. Nature of language, meaning and applied the ways through which women were projected in literature. She was against objectification. She was there just to take the women as equal as the men in society. She favored psychological studies of Lacan, Foucault for reading about women. She challenged the hegemony of males, the domination of males in the form of patriarchy, in the form of the caretakers, in the form of protectors, and only all the time sacrifices were attributed to the name of the females. So she turned against all these ideas and all these views. She hated the concept of keeping women under domination or patriarchal way of thinking. She wanted to create a sort of equality as women were also be there to get some weightage. They must be able to express their ideas, to express their passions and feelings about life, about anything else, and they were also be able to show their liking and dislikings. Next writer is Luce Irigaray, 1930 to date. She was Bulgarian French feminist. She worked with other French feminists and she was the student of Lacan, and she got the psychological depth about the issues of females. She was influenced by the theories of psychoanalysis, linguistics, post structuralism, as well as postmodernism. And she gave a framework like Speculation of Other Women in 1974, which was a sort of famous work which based on the ideas which one lady was having about other females or other women, or the male in the society having those ideas about the females. She criticized the works of Lacan and Freud, who presented monolithic depiction of society and privilege phallocentric worldview. She was against whole Western philosophy due to liking in feminine ideas and self. So, students, this is all about the feminism of feminist literary theory, feminist literary criticism. Understand all these points which I have told you or I have taught you, and then look at the questions in the last slide. And if you find any difficulty, you may comment, you may ask in the form of all sorts of queries. You are most welcome. Thank you so much.